Hey guys, I'm just chilling in FDR's office. You can see he's got his wheelchair right here. I'm not going to keep this the entire time, but I just want to get us started through this because it's really cool. We have a bell ringer today, and we're doing 2 slides today. Let's go. Okay, so took away the FDR's office background so we can actually get some slides done. Yesterday we talked about Berlin. Remember that Germany is cut into two. This one. Germany is cut into two. We have West Germany and East Germany, and then if you enter East Germany, you have Berlin, which is East Berlin and West Berlin. West Berlin is controlled by the United States and the Allies, and East Berlin is controlled by the Soviet Union. Joseph Stalin has cut these people off because they aren't falling to the communist economy and dictatorship that he wants, so he's cut them off and he's not giving them resources. Classic Joseph Stalin move. So the United States institutes the Berlin Airlift. We do this for almost a year, and we are giving resources and food and supplies to the people of West Berlin because we're in charge of them, and we can't let them die. So that's the Berlin Airlift. And NATO is formed, which we still have today, which is it's an alliance system that it says basically, if one of the countries within the NATO goes to war, then everyone goes to war. We still have this today, like I said. It's pretty significant because you want to have these friends. You want to make sure that you are supported and protected if something bad were to happen. So it's good that we have NATO. But back during the Cold War, we were worried about the Soviet Union. So we're doing slides 9 and 10. Slide 9 is called Returning Home. Let's talk about this. We have two vocab words. We have the GI Bill and we have baby boom. Let's just preface. There's those okay boomer jokes that have been going around. I don't know, I'm 65. Is that still a thing? I have no idea. So I don't want to hear any baby boomer jokes. I don't want to hear about it until after we get through the baby boom discussion. And you know what? Let's just make it for the rest of the unit. Okay, let's talk about this. The end of World War II was a really great time for the country. Obviously, not fighting in a war anymore is a great thing. However, there's some unintended consequences to not being in war at this time. So really great, war's over. Well, what about all the factories and the industries and the jobs that were created because of the war? Keep in mind that factories were opened to manufacture like airplanes and stuff, or the factory that you worked in stopped manufacturing whatever you made before, and now you're going to manufacture planes or ammunition or trucks, right, for soldiers. It's kind of something like today with the coronavirus, there are certain factories and industries that have volunteered to stop producing whatever they produce to start producing ventilators or masks or anything like that. We did that during World War II, but for the military, and today there's discussion of doing that for medical equipment like beds, right, or the gowns that the nurses and doctors wear. I don't know if you've ever heard of this company called Fanatics. They make sportswear. Like if you wanted to buy like something from the University of Toledo or something, whatever it is, you could go on their website and purchase like a Toledo shirt or something. They do this for a ton of schools, and I think like major or like national leagues, whatever. Not gonna get into it. They have stopped producing Major League Baseball stuff because the season was canceled, and now they're producing the gowns and stuff that doctors and nurses wear in hospitals. So the president can institute what's called the Defense Production Act or something like that. It's defense to production. At the time of war, we need this it basically says you are forced to produce things for war. This is a war against the coronavirus, and President Trump has said that he doesn't feel the need to institute this act because there are companies that are volunteering to do this on their own, but the states need these things. So, I mean, this is pretty controversial. Why can't he just institute this act and now everyone has to produce these goods? It also may produce more jobs as well, but you can only have 10 people in a room. So I don't know, because, during World War II, we didn't have a pandemic, and you could have as many people as you needed. That was like up to code in a factory. So I'm not sure. I'm not the one making these decisions, but I do know that the states need these resources. So 12 million men and women had been serving in the armed forces and they were now returning home. Production's going to slow down though because we aren't producing these things for war anymore, so we don't need that many tanks or anything, and factories can go back to producing what they were producing before the war. So before Roosevelt died and before the war ended, he signed the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. This act later became known as the GI Bill. GI stands for Government Issue. Sometimes you'll hear soldiers are called GIs. Government issue something, like they are issued by the government to serve in the war. That would be like a draft. So the GI Bill is so significant. I think I have it I have it highlighted on mine. I think it might be on yours. I re-uploaded them. The GI Bill helped millions of GIs make a successful transition back to civilian life. We learned this after World War I. Immediately when our soldiers came home, they were experiencing shell shock, which today is PTSD, massive amounts of just depression, and okay, welcome back to normal life. You have to go back to work and take care of the family, and if you can't take care of the family, and if you're struggling emotionally, then something's wrong with you, right? We didn't think about the emotional scars that these soldiers are having after World War I because we didn't know. We had never fought a war like that before. So the GI Bill helps soldiers transition back into normal life. It's not like, okay, welcome back, and you're jumping right into it. This is a slow and easy process where like, okay, you just experienced something awful. Let's help you readjust back into normal life. It's brilliant. It's great. We still have the GI Bill. Like there are still programs today, like veterans who return from, whether it's Afghanistan or some kind of service in the military today, they get, some pensions from the military and more opportunities for like education or job training. So we don't just like, drop them back into their home state and be like, all right, you're on your own. We help them transition, and it's absolutely brilliant. Of course, we could always do more for our veterans, but the GI Bill is a really big thing. So this was aimed at helping veterans make a smooth transition to civilian life. We learned this after World War I. It provided money for veterans to attend college and receive job training. It helped arrange loans for the people buying homes, farms, or businesses. It also provided a year's worth of unemployment benefits for the people who couldn't find work. So if you came back and you were like, all right, I want to help out my family in some way. Let's buy a home. Let's move. I don't want to live in the city, or I do want to live in the city. Whatever it is, you have the opportunity to do what you want for your life and for your family. It helped boost the economy. Like I said at the beginning, our production is slowing down because we're not producing these things for war anymore. But we are providing loans and, payments and just like a fund for these soldiers. So yeah, we're not producing this stuff and our production is slowing down, but people are still going to buy things. It's the same thing, after World War I, we had the Roaring 20s. People are like, I can buy things and this is great and we have credit. Same thing's gonna happen after World War II, especially, if you win the war, then your economy's great. Wars are really good for your economy if you win. So we did. And now the people who were rationing during the war are like, I don't have to ration anymore. I can go and buy whatever I want. That's great. Okay, so the economy is going to be boosting for sure. President Trump actually was talking about this kind of same idea for, our economy is not doing great right now. And which is for obvious reasons, like we can't go out and purchase things and factories are not producing as much. But he said that the economy after this, and when we can all go back into normal life, will be boosting again. How many people like can't wait to go to a restaurant and stuff, right? So, which is the same thing after war. You don't have to ration anymore. You can do and pay for what you want. And you can pay for what you want. Same thing, right? After this pandemic, we can go back out and we can pay for things and buy stuff. So I think it's gonna boost our economy. Which I'm predicting that it will. So I hope, but I could be wrong. So in addition to people like starting a life, we're gonna have a baby boom. The 2 decades following World War II is known as the beginning of the baby boom. My mom is a baby boomer. Like that's a generation, like the OK boomer. That is a boomer, or the baby boom generation. That is a group of people who were born in the years following World War II. So like there's Generation X, there's Generation Z, there's millennials. That's just a generation. It's how you identify a group of people born at this, like in this span of years. So the baby boomers are born after World War II because the soldiers are coming back, and it's like, I just fought in a terrible war, and now I want to go and move to the suburbs and start a family, get married, and live a normal life. So these are the baby boomers. No boomer jokes. So many people were born. This is actually a big thing too with like them with the baby boomers retiring, that the millennials, which this is my age group, we have to work because there are, well, you should work anyway, but the baby boomers are retiring. So if you can retire, because a lot of people can't retire because things are so expensive. So the baby boomers are retiring, and the millennials, which is like the next largest group of people, have to take over. We have to work for them. So we like keep this going, keep this running. So it's pretty interesting how this works, and being a generation, and like how important your generation is. So make good choices and be a good generation. Like I said, my mom is a baby boomer. I don't call her boomer. I call her mom. Moving on, next slide. This is called Labor Unions and Minorities. This is a tiny little baby slide. There's no vocab words. It's just basically saying that, during World War II, there were strikes. We talked about like the protest of workers saying like, I'm not gonna make an airplane standing right next to an African American, like just pointless protests that we, number one, are, that's racist. And number two, the country didn't have time for your racist beliefs. So FDR instituted, executive orders saying that you cannot go on strike for these things. We have to produce these things for the war. We don't have time for these racist things. So after the war, minority groups started to realize, like, we should always have these rights, which, well, it's not like they started to realize that. They've always known that they should have these rights at all times. So they started pushing for equality, and we're going to see if we won't get to it. But Unit 8 was a civil rights movement, like pushing for equal rights in all aspects of life, because they were granted these during World War II, and it's like, let's just keep it. Let's just keep these and not take them away, right? So, the government also had the power to stop these strikes, like in general, because again, we didn't have time for this because of war. So, we're going to keep that as well, that if the strikes start to get out of hand, then the government can always just step in and kind of stop them if it was for the national interest. The reason why we're going to keep this power of the government stopping the strikes is because we are fighting a Cold War with the Soviet Union, and it's in the national interest for us to like keep producing things, because we can't let our economy fail, and we can't lose this Cold War to the Soviets. The second paragraph, efforts to provide equal opportunity for African Americans in wartime government and industry jobs did not end after the war. Executive Order 9981 ended segregation in the U.S. Armed Forces, which paved the way for future gains. You know this. World War I and World War II, we had segregated units. Sometimes, African Americans would not even be like called to the front lines. They'd have to participate, because they were drafted, but they wouldn't be called to the front lines, or there'd be like certain soldiers who wouldn't trust working or fighting next to an African American soldier, or like maybe a Mexican soldier, or some kind of minority Asian soldiers, right? Especially because maybe they're Japanese or Chinese, but Japanese in particular because of Pearl Harbor, right? So we have lots of like discrimination for sure, but the Executive Order 9981, which is signed by Harry Truman, ended segregation in the U.S. Armed Forces. So now, like, we don't have segregated units, and you are all just like one entity. You're all part of the Army. You're all part of the Navy, which it seems kind of hard to believe, but now it's you're just all a part of it, which, thank God. They fought in a world war, left the world war, and returned home to discrimination, because even you fought hard, and now you return home and you get discriminated against. You can't eat at restaurants, right? There's Jim Crow laws, and it's just awful. Hispanic American veterans. These, they're going to join together for the American GI Forum, which was a group that worked to win full access for Hispanic veterans to the benefits they earned during service. This is kind of what I said before. They received more rights during war, and so all of these minority groups are going to say, why can't we just keep them, right? Let's just keep these rights. Don't take them away. Let us have them always, because we've been fighting long enough for these things. We fought for our country. Give us these rights at all times. All right. That is it. Don't forget your summaries for those slides. Write down your vocab words. Do your bell ringer, and I will see you after break. Bye, guys.